We thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. Because of our learning, we should have the basic English immediately. We're going to start today Kuf Chav Aleph from Beis and the Mishnah. The Mishnah, it's the middle of the page. It says, "Afilu shama min anashim maimris." Even if the witness that's coming to tell us that this fellow passed away, he didn't actually see the person, but he heard that the women were saying, "Meisish plaini, so and so died." Daya, that's enough. He can already come back to the Besdin and say, that's what they're talking about over there, that he died. So that's good enough. Rabbi Yudaimer afilu shama min atinaikus hariano halcham lisped v'lik for sish plaini bein shem miskaven bein she'ena miskaven. Even if they hear the children saying that we're going to eulogize and to bury so-and-so, we're going to the funeral of so-and-so, that's also enough, whether they're intending to testify or not. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, we had Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava before, he says, Bi Yisrael afal pishu miskaven. If it's a Jewish person, then we don't mind if he's saying it and he knows what's going to come out of his statement. But if it's a non-Jew, then we only trust him if he's what's called misiach lefi tumai. He's just telling it to us, not realizing the consequences of his statement. If he's telling it to us as a story, then we'll believe it. But if he tells it to us because he's trying to accomplish something, then we don't trust him. We think that maybe he has an agenda. So if it was just misiach lefi tumai, means just as telling us a story that's like of no consequence, then we trust him. The Gemara says, the Gemara has a question. The children said that they're going to bury so-and-so, they eulogize and bury. But Dilma Layazli, maybe they were talking about that they were going to go bury and eulogize because the person was going to pass away, but he didn't actually pass away and they didn't go. It didn't say that they're coming back from, right? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, the Kamri, Harenu Bain Milis Benulik versus plain. You know, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel that they didn't say that they're going to eulogize. It said that they're coming back from eulogizing. That's already a different story. The Gemara says, V'dilma kamtze bal mashachavlei, v'asikalei al shmei. Yeah, the Gemara understands the children quite well. It says maybe that there was a grasshopper that died, and the children made up a name for it. And they were saying, we're going to bury so-and-so. And what they're really referring to is their pet grasshopper. And it wasn't really an actual person. Yeah. Today would be a doll. Those days it was a grasshopper. Like the Gemara describes the toys of the children back then. To cut off the head of the chicken and you give it to the child to play with. So that was the doll. They gave it a name, and they're saying, "Oh, we're going to bury it." It says the Kamri Kain v'Kain Rabbanan Havi Hasim v'Kain Saftani Havi Hasim, because in their story that they're going to bury this so and so, they also said, not that they're going to, that they're coming back from. They also said that, well, this and this rabbi were there, and this eulogizer spoke, so they had much more details than they would have had for the grasshopper. Okay, if it's a non-Jew and he intends to accomplish something with his testimony, so then we don't trust him. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel leishanu el sheniskaven lahater. When do we say that there's an issue with his intention? That if his intention is there to permit the wife to marry, if that's what his intention is. But if he just wants to tell the court that so-and-so passed away in a different town, then they do say yedus. Then that we can trust. We don't see that as such a great accomplishment that he should be lying about that. He's just coming to say that someone died and the town didn't know. But if he realizes that he's permitting a wife to get married, that we won't trust him. Hechi Yadinan. How do we know what his intention is? Rav Yosef, if he adds to the conclusion of a sentence, allow his wife to get married, so then we know that that was his intention. If he just says that the person died, then that's just he wants the Besdin to know that he died, but not because of any consequence that's going to come from that. Okay. Itmar Nami was also stated on Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says, this is only if he intended to permit the woman to get married. That's when we won't trust him. But if he intends to testify that the person died, then we'll actually trust him. And we'll allow the woman to get married. Amalei Rabbi Yochanan is the brother-in-law of Rish Lakish. He says to Rish Lakish, how can you say this? Did we not have a story with Ushia the Great? Ushia sounds like Rabbi Ushia. Shehitiram im shmeinim v'chamisha zakenim. There's another version here. Shehisris. Sounds like he permitted, together with 75 elders, in such a way. I guess a non-Jew came and testified that someone died, and he was permitting the wife to get married. Amalahem, he told them, when do we not trust the non-Jew that's telling us about someone that died? That's only if his intention was to allow the wife to get married. But this fellow is only telling us because he wants us to know that he died, and he didn't add anything in about the wife getting married. But the sages didn't agree to that. And the sages did not accept what Rabbi Shia was doing. So Rish Lakish, how could you say that you want to trust a non-Jew? The sages didn't agree to that. So then when is there a case where we'll trust a non-Jew? If he says that he wants the wife to get remarried, we don't trust him. If he says, I just want to let you know that the guy died, we don't trust him. So when do we trust him? When he has no point. He comes in, he says, you should have seen that funeral, not because he has any point. It's just talking. Like this person that was coming and going. Manika bechivoi. Manika bechivoi. Is there anyone here from the house of Chivoi? Is anyone here from the house of Chivoi? Shachiv Chivoi. Chivoi died. He just wanted to let them know that a relative of theirs died. So, and it wasn't like a testimony of some sort. It was just talking. Rav Yosef allowed the wife to get remarried. There was a person that came. He said, "Woe to Parshas Riza." Is that the person's name? Does he translate it there?
Brave horseman.
The brave horseman. Parsha must mean the horseman, and Zriza must mean brave. That was in Pumbedisa that died. The Insiva Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef, and some say it was Rava that allowed the wife to get married. It's interesting. Rava is a student, not a Rabba would have been his friend. Hahu, there was a person that became Is anyone here from the house of Chasa? Tava Chasa, Chasa drowned. Chasa sounds like lettuce, right? But it's apparently this is a person that was mentioned in other places. Chasa.
Kind of avocado. The chas.
The Has. Amar Rav Nachman says, Elikim achlu kavri lachasa. It's like, whoa, by God, the fish have eaten chasa. Well, Midiburi de Rav Nachman, when Rav Nachman said that, also the bisu, the chasa v'insuba, the wife of chasa went out and got married. And they didn't tell her anything. Amar Rav Ashi says, Shema mina had Amar Rabbanan mayim shein lem soif. You see, there's a big issue over here. He fell into water. What type of water? If it's mayim shein lem soif, there's no end. He can't see the end of the water. Then we have to suspect that maybe he came up somewhere and we didn't see. So Rav Ashi says, based on this story, that if it's mayim shein lem soif, when we say ishta yasura, the wife is prohibited to get married. Hani mili lechatchila, that's only initially she's prohibited to get married. Avali nasiv, but if she does get married, we don't make them get divorced. And as we saw this yesterday, although it didn't spell it out like this, it just said it in passing, that if they get married, then we let them stay married. Ikadamri, those that say Insiba Rav Nachman L'Debisu, that Rav Nachman actually initially allowed this wife to get married. Amar Chasa Gavar Rabbi, you see, Chasa is a great person. See, he actually has, we know who this is. And Demisa the Salik, if we actually got out of the water, then people would have said, oh, he survived. But the Gemara says that we don't accept that logically, just like yesterday we had the logic like that. It says Leishna Gavarabba, Leishna Lab Gavarabba, the Evidin L'Chatchila. We don't say that if it would have been a famous person that people would have told us that he's alive and therefore we didn't hear anything, it must be that he's dead. We don't say that. We say that if we don't know that if he got out, then we don't know. We can't prove it based on the fact that we didn't hear anything, right? Because if it was a famous person, then we would have heard. That's not a proof. There was a non-Jew that was telling a Jewish person, Kitol aspasta. Cut the aspasta is the straw from the wheat, and it was used for hay as fodder, for food for the animals. B'shadi lechivai b'Shabbat, and give it to my animals on Shabbos. Okay, it's Shabbos. He's not allowed to do that. But he says v'ilai, and if not, katilna lach the katilna lepleni bar Yisrael. If you don't give my animal food, says I'll kill you like I killed that other Jew. The Amri lay that I told him bashali kader b'Shabbos, cook for me some stew on Shabbos. V'lei bashali, he didn't cook for me. B'katilte, and I killed him. Shama de Bisu, well, the wife of the guy that has not returned, hears this guy saying that he didn't want to cook on Shabbos and they killed him. She comes to Abaya, says, I figured out what happened to my husband. He got killed. So Shaisa Tilsa Wrigley. They waited. She says to wait. They waited 3 holidays. Well, what would happen here is that they would gather together to discuss halacha around the holiday time, and all the great people were there, and they would discuss this question. Rashi over here says, in that he found in the Chuvas Hagainim that really it's talking about a yard site. There would be yard sites when people would get together and all the sages would discuss. They would make a yeshiva on the grave of the great person, and they would discuss the halachas there. So Abaya says, let's wait. We'll discuss it all together, see what the halacha is. Apparently, they didn't get the answer. So Ravada Barava says, Zilakami de Rabbi Yosef. Go to Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef is the teacher of Abaya. The Charef Sakini is very sharp. It's a sharp knife. Ozlakameh. Again, this woman wants to get married, and she hears that from a non-Jew that her husband died, was killed by this fellow. So Pasham Yamas Nisi. He answered from this Mishnah that says, or a Brisa, if there's a non-Jew that's selling produce in the marketplace, and he says, my fruits, they come from young trees. Trying to get people to buy it.
Yeah.
He said the wrong thing. He said it's Arla. You know? Shall Azika, they come from Azika. Azika has different interpretations. Some say that it's an area that's protected, and on Shemitah, you're not allowed to take fruits from there. And it's Shemitah. And others say that it's coming from a city in Eretz Yisrael, and this is actually not in Israel. It was taken out, and it was during Shemitah. Or it's from the 4th year of the produce, not the first 3 years. So, Lo Yamar Klum, we don't believe that his fruits are forbidden. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's trying to get people to buy, and this is like false advertising.
All of these.
All of these. We don't believe that. He thinks he's improving his produce by saying this. So Leinis Gabanel Ashbiach Mikha, he was just trying to praise his produce, his merchandise. Okay, so 1 second before we go further. What was Rabbi Yosef's response is that it's very possible that the non-Jew that said, cut this grass for my animal, or else I'll kill you like the other guy that I killed. So we don't know if he really killed him. He's just saying this to convince him. Basically, the answer that Rabbi Yosef gave is that there's still a doubt.
So she can't remarry.
She can't remarry.
Well, I had a colleague who disappeared, and they couldn't find him. And I think a year and a half later, a helicopter was going over one of the canals, and they saw a car. But he had been in the car.
In the water.
In the water, underwater, for a year and a half.
Uh-huh.
So they identified him, but not by the 1.5 years, but by teeth, I guess.
Uh-huh.
So he had been missing for a year and a half. Would she have been? Could she have remarried during that time?
No, missing is a problem.
But it was in a body of water that had an end. But no one saw him go down. That's the point.
Right. Well, if they would have seen him go down and not come up, and the body of water had an end, it means you could see both. You can turn around and see the bank on all 4 sides.
Yeah, probably.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
then that would have been considered dead, and they would have allowed.
No one saw him.
Yeah, so that's the problem. How do you end up in a car in the water?
It's voluntary.
Oh, okay. I guess that's not a question. Abi Yudin ish Tzayden Amar, Abi Yudin of Tzayden, he said, Maisa bi Yisrael v'ayv k'chavim shalcha b'derech, story of a Jew and a non-Jew on the road. V'ayv k'chavim v'amar, and the non-Jew says, afterwards, it says, Chaval al Yehudi sheyimi b'derech, woe to that poor Jew who's with me on the road, but shemeis b'derech v'kavartiv. He died, I had to bury him. V'siu ishtay, they allowed the wife to get married. Shiv Maisa b'koiler shel b'nei adam. Koiler is like a prisoner, but it's probably the word collar. They probably had some sort of collar on. There's a group of prisoners. They were on the way to Antioch, right? It's one of the major cities. And he says, woe to that group of people. They died, I had to bury them. And they allowed all the wives to get married. There were 60 people that were being brought to Kharkum, which is a siege of Beitar. It was a siege by the revolt, right? All 60 died. They died on the road. We see us Nishayim, and they allowed the wives to get remarried. Yeah, they're probably who would be taking them? It wouldn't be the Jewish people taking them, it would be the Romans taking them. And they were probably being brought to as prisoners of some sort. Anyway, you see that they could trust the testimony of a non-Jew just while he's talking. Okay, this Mishnah says, a new Mishnah, can testify that he saw the body by the light of a candle or by the light of the moon, and that's enough to recognize the face. Masiyan alpi baskal. How does that work? They let a person get married because a baskal came out and said, so and so died. Who said it? It's a baskal. Sounds like a voice from heaven. That Terele Bashamayim. Yeah, maybe it's just in his head, right? Yeah, I'm not concerned about Terele Bashamayim because Terele Bashamayim means that the heaven doesn't paskin when we have a question. But this would be. Does he have a comment on this? What does he say? He searched the area. They didn't find anyone. If the voice was heard in a field or pit, one might suspect the presence of a demon. One may not rely on the statement. In case where there is any suspicion that the voice might be unreliable and may not be relied upon. This applies even if the listener saw a shadow of a shadow. Okay, we'll get into that in a minute. Okay.
We don't know what it was.
They heard a voice. Okay. So here it's just saying what event took place. That's what the voice is saying. Maisa bechad shaman al reishahar was someone that was standing on top of a mountain. V'amar, and he said, "Ish pleni ben pleni mi makam pleni meis." So and so, and from such and such a place died. They went to the mountain to see who had said that. They couldn't find anyone. They let him get married. Shuv Maisa b'Tzalmain. It's a story in the place of Tzalmain. Bechad shamar. Someone said, "Ani ish pleni ben ish pleni." I am so and so, the son of so and so. Nashchani nachash. I got bitten by a snake. Varani mace. And I'm about to die. Must be right. Can't be an I am dead. And Harayani mace means I'm about to die. Is that how they translate it? And I am dying. And I am dying. Okay. V'leyikiru. They didn't recognize who he was. However, but they let his wife get remarried because of his announcement while he was dying that what his name is. That was good enough for us. Notice we couldn't recognize him by his features, but they knew who he was because he said who he was. Amar Rabba Bar Shmuel. Rabba Bar Shmuel says, Tana, it's taught in a brayso b'Shamai Yomrim. Bishamai says in Masiyan Alpi Baskal that you can't trust the Baskal, a heavenly voice. Beisil Leimer Masiyan Alpi Baskal. Beisil says you can. Well, it's a problematic statement because our Mishnah says that you can't trust the voice. And why would anyone want to tell us Bishamai's opinion? We don't follow it anyway. What's the point? Okay. So Gemara says, "My Kamashmalan, what are you telling me? Masnisini." The Mishnah says Beisil's opinion, and that's good enough for us. It says Hakamashmalan di Mishtakach Stama Dein Masiyan Bishamei. It's coming to protect us from finding a brisa that says that we don't trust the Baskal. They want us to know that you should know that we know about that opinion and we don't follow that. That's Bishamei's view. Yeah. That's the Rambam's explanation for all of non-accepted halacha that's quoted in the Gemara. So what do we need it for? What's it doing there? Just tell us what the bottom line is. It says, well, we shouldn't be, we shouldn't get flustered if someone comes over to us and says we have a tradition about this and that chicken and milk is not a problem.
Yeah, French cuisine.
So
Green
because it's only a kid in its mother's milk, and chicken's mothers don't have milk. So obviously you can eat chicken with milk. We'll tell him that, the Gemara discusses that opinion and it doesn't follow it. So we don't get flustered by it came across so logical, but that's why the Gemara has all of these statements, even though we don't follow them. Okay.
So if they think up a new one today, that the Gemara doesn't have as the alternative rejected ones. then
Right.
then
Then
we
we'll
have to
get
decide.
confused, right? But it has to be with a tradition. There's
Oh.
some tribe in India that comes back, great Talmidei Chachamim with one nuance different. Okay. Now we said V'halchu v'lo matzu. They went and they couldn't find the person, and we're trusting him. It says V'dilma Sheid Hava. Maybe it's a demon. How do you know it's a baskal? From Rabbi Yehuda Marav, Shrolei D'mus Adam. Well, it looked like a person. So it says Inunami Damu. Well, demons can also make themselves look like people. The Chazal Babua. We saw a shadow.
Oh,
I think that
demons
demons don't have shadows.
of course.
So Vinunamius Labua, but demons do have shadows. Says the Chazal Babua de Babua. They saw the shadow of a shadow. I don't know what the shadow of a shadow is. I think a shadow, the only thing I can think of is that if there's two lights shining on the person, you can get a shadow in both directions.
Right.
And it's a secondary shadow. And demons can only have one shadow. I don't know. I don't have an explanation. There can't be a shadow of a shadow because
It says a shadow.
shadow
and the
can't.
shadow, I cast another shadow.
No, but the shadow doesn't block light.
Maybe certain kinds of shadows.
Okay.
Maybe one is just the outline of the shadow. I don't know.
Shadow king.
Yes, you're way ahead of me. Okay. So, an outline of a shadow in here.
Yeah. Good question.
I don't know what it means. I don't know. Yeah.
We're stumped, right?
So Amar Reb Chanina. Reb Chanina says, Amar li Yonasan Shida Bua Islu Bua de Bebua Leslu. Reb Chanina says that he had a conversation with Jonathan, the demon. Yonasan Shida, and this Yonasan, the demon, said that demons only have shadows; they don't have a shadow of a shadow. Vidilma Tzarahavai. Maybe it was one of the women that we don't trust that was up there saying that the husband died. She's trying to get the rival wife into trouble to make her into an embarrassment. She gives this information that the husband died, the woman's going to get married, and then she's whatever. So Tana de Rabbi Shmuel b'shas sakana kaisvim nice enough pishem makirin. The time of sakana, we trust. What was the case? Someone that's in a pit, and they hear his voice shouting out, saying, "Give a get to my wife. My name is so and so." And even though they can't see him, but they hear him talking, that's good enough, and they can give a get to his wife. So we trust these voices, even if we can't see him at times of danger. Amar Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said, we had this quoted before a few days ago. When I went to Nardai to make the leap year, because they used to make the calendar in the Bezdin. And so apparently in Nardai was where they were going to do it, even though they're not supposed to do it outside of Israel. That's only if there are rabbis in Israel. Apparently there weren't any great rabbis in Israel, so they went over there. But I found Nehemiah from the house of Dali. I hear what's going on in Israel. They're not trusting of one witness to allow a woman to get married, El Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, except for the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. But everyone else says that you need two witnesses to let a woman get remarried. Two witnesses that the husband died. But not in the Misilai, I responded, Rabbi Kiva says, yeah, that's talking what's going on in Israel. You read the news correctly. Amali, he says, tell them in my name. You know that it's very hard to travel over here. There's soldiers everywhere, and he can't leave his family. I heard from Rabbi Gamliel Azakin, that's Rabbi Gamliel's grandfather, that you're allowed to let a woman get remarried based on the testimony of a single witness. So I went and told this to Rabbi Gamliel, who's the grandson. He was very happy to what I said. This is Rabbi Akiva talking. He said, we found a friend for Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. That means we found the support for him, that he was trusting one witness. While this conversation's going on, Rabbi Gamliel remembered there were people that died in Tel Arza. Do we know what that is? Tel Arza? After this, Rabbi Gamliel allowed them to get married based on one person's testimony. After that, it became established that we can trust a single witness, we can trust a slave, we can trust a woman, we can trust a maidservant that say that a person died, we can let their wives get remarried. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua Imrim, Ein Masin Nasi Shal Pi Yedechad. Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua say no, you can't trust based on one witness. Rabbi Kiva Imrim, Loyal Pi Yishav, Loyal Pi Eved, Loyal Pi Shivcha, Loyal Pi Krevim. How could this be? Rabbi Kiva is the one that brought the says you can't trust the slave, you can't trust the shivcha, you can't trust relatives. I guess what Rabbi Akiva brought over was just that you can trust a single witness, but it has to be a kosher witness, not a non-kosher witness.
It's not a woman and not a slave and not
a relative. Rabbi Akiva al Piyishaloi. The Gemara asks, Rabbi Akiva holds you can't trust a woman. But Tanya, starting in a brayso, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and Rabbi Akiva. Shimon ben Elazar says the name of Rabbi Akiva. A woman can bring her own get, show up in a new city with her get and say, I'm divorced and I can get married. So Rabbi Akiva says, I'll prove it to you that this is trustworthy. No. Usually, nowadays, yeah, they make an accident. Yeah, and that's what the Bezdin does nowadays once it's been given. But I don't know if that was always the tradition. She would have it as her record, you know. When it comes to this 5 women that we don't trust them to say that so-and-so's husband died, but we do trust them to carry a get and to bring it. We trust them that the get is valid. We ask them, were you there at the time of the signing? And they say yes. But because there's a document that supports their statement, the get, so we do trust them. So but a woman is trusted to say that her own husband died. So if women that we don't trust to say that the husband died, we trust them to bring a get. So this woman that is trusted to say her husband died, in a din for sure should be allowed to bring her get. Now, the fact that Rabbi Kiva said that there's certain women that we don't trust them, that sounds like Isha Bal Mehemna, that other women besides for those 5 we would trust. It means that Rabbi Kiva holds that we trust a woman to testify about the death of a husband. Gemara says like Kasha, kan kodim shech ziku, kan lacher shech ziku. Depends what was going on. There was a time when they didn't trust a woman, but then, as we saw in the Mishnah, that Rabbi Kiva brought back this news, and then it became the accepted custom to trust, and that's when Rabbi Kiva said that we do trust, except for the 5. Okay. The Mishnah says, Amrullah, they said to him, who are they talking to? To Rabbi Akiva. Maisa b'bnei Levi shalchu l'tzayar yerat marim. I thought it was Yericha yerat marim. Tzayar yerat marim. Is that a biblical source for that? They said that there was these children of Levi that went to Tzayar, the city of dates. That means palm trees. One of them got sick. They brought him to an inn. And on the way back, Amr Lepunticus, they told the innkeeperess, Aye Chavarenu, where is our friend? No, Miss Lehem, she responded, Mesa Kavartiv, he died, and I buried him. They see with Ishte, they let his wife get married. You don't want to trust another woman that passed away. They trusted an innkeeper. For sure, you should trust a kohenes. Kohenes means a righteous woman. If she would be in the same status of the pundikus, then we would trust her. Why? Because the pundikus brings out his staff and his bag and his sefer Torah, and then we knew that he had passed away. She brought us the items she brought us his belonging, so we trusted. If that would be the case with another woman, then we would trust. But just to show up, then at least before the time that they trusted the women, to say that, then they with those items, then they would trust her. My grayus of the pundikus. Why are they saying that you can't trust this pundikus? What's the problem? She's a regular woman. What's wrong? Amar Rav Kana pundikus avedes kechavim haisa mesichla vituma haisa. Zeh makla v'zeh tamila v'zeh kevesh kavarta. But it was a non-Jewish woman. That was the issue, and that's why we had a kal v'chaimer. If you can trust the pundikus, for sure you should trust a regular woman. What's wrong with the pundikus? Well, she wasn't Jewish, but she was mesiach lefituma. That means she's speaking just as a story, as a tale, and she's saying that, well, here's his staff, here's his bag, and here's the grave that I buried him in. Wow. Abba braid the Rav Minyumi Barchia. Abba, the son of Rav Minyumi Barchia. Remember we had Bar Minyumi? We had it yesterday. Bar Marta, Bar Minyumi. No? Didn't say Barchia though that time. Somewhere over here. Where it is. Okay. So, yeah, she was talking and she said the story. This is the grave. This is his bag. This is his stick. The Gemara says, "What are you telling me that she was Mesiach Levitumah?" They asked her a question. She was testifying to them. They said, "Where is our friend?" It says, "Kivan the Chazisinu Bachia Amalei Chavrenu." They saw her crying, so she initiated the conversation. That Mesiach Levitumah means that they start the conversation. So she initiated. She was crying. Doesn't have to be they started. It just means that she has no specific intention here in what she's accomplishing. But they see her crying, so they said, "Where's our friend?" So she was just responding to their question. Yeah. Tanu Rabbanan. The rabbis taught. Person that came to testify about a woman, I guess it means, whose husband had died, and they're testifying for her. To Reb Tarfon. My son, how do you know this story? Amar, he said, we were on the road. And a group of soldiers ran after us. This fellow, he grabs a stick of an olive tree. he stuck it. No, does it? He stuck it or he swung it? He uprooted it. That must mean.
It says
Yeah.
he tore it off.
He tore it off. He tore it off. And I guess with the stick, he chased the soldiers away.
Wow.
They didn't have guns back then. They also had sticks. Right? The sticks. So Amartilai, I said to him, Arye Yashikayach, a lion. Whoa. Yashikayach, so strong. Amarli, Minainati Yadesha Aryashmi. How do you know my name is a lion? His name is Arye. Kach Karne Sibir, that's what they call me. Yochanan B'Rabbi Yonasan Arye de Kfar Shechya. My name is Yochanan, the son of Yonasan, the lion from Kfar Shechya. Well, Liyamim Chalo Mes. Well, he passed away, and the history of Tarfon is Ishtay. Tarfon allowed the wife to get married based on this. Why? Because we knew his name, because the fellow told us his name. He told the other person. The Gemara asked for Tarfon by Drisha v'Chakir. Tarfon doesn't require that you interrogate the witness. But Tani Ma'aseh B'Adam Mecham Sheba'Lef Nei Reb Tarfon, we have another brisa. It's like L'Hoy Deit Sisha. Someone came to testify in front of Reb Tarfon about the woman whose husband passed away. I'm like, Bani, Hechati Yedei Desu. Says, how do you know this that this is who it is? I'm like, Anivo Yohalchem Aderach, brother V'Chein Agayas, V'Nitl B'Yichetena, P'Shachai, V'Chser Segayas L'Achayrav. The soldiers were chasing after us. He grabbed onto an olive branch. He tore it off. He chased the soldiers away. Martel Yashikayach Aryeh says Yashikayach Aryeh. So Amarli Yafik Kavanti Lishmi Shkach Karne Sibiri Yechanan ben Yonasan Ayedim Kfar Shechya Liyamim Chalomes. That's exactly what they called me. Yonasan, Yochanan, the son of Yonasan, the lion from Kfar Shechya. And then this fellow got sick and he died. Amarli. Like Kachamartli Yochanan ben Yonasan Kfar Shechya. Did you tell me that his name was Yochanan ben Yonasan of Kfar Shechna, the lion? Kfar Shechya, the lion? Amalei Loi. He said, no, that's not what I said. What I said was Yochanan ben Yonasan Aryeh de Kfar Shechya. Yochanan, the son of Yonasan, the lion from Kfar Shechna. You get the difference. If the word lion came before the Yochanan ben Yonasan, the lion of Kfar Shechna, or Yochanan ben Yonasan of Kfar Shechna, the lion. So and he was interrogating him 2 or 3 times. The Kivan Estevarav, but the fellow always was consistent with his story. This Reb Tarfon is Ishtay. Reb Tarfon allowed the wife to get married. So this is our question. It seems like Reb Tarfon requires interrogation. And over here in the brisa that we quoted, he didn't have interrogation. When it says Tanai, it's actually a Machlekes Tanaim. Okay, let's leave this last piece. If anyone's finishing the Masechta, well, first of all, there's a Siyum tonight at 7. But if you want to hold it for the 9 days, you can. You don't finish the Masechta, you can hold it. The 9 days is coming up. You can make a Siyum in the 9 days.
Don't listen tonight.
Well, you don't read it over. If you want to hold it, it's you can make a Siyum in the shelf for the 9 days.
How many people actually finishing this whole thing?
Who's making the team tonight? You?
Tonight, the Siyum will be made, I think, by Avi Wagshal, which is, it's also Sheva Brachas for his son or his daughter. He'll be here in Beis Menachem at 7 p.m.
Very nice. All right. Also.
Okay.